It's Cash Color Cannabis, high level of conversation on livehiphopdaily.tv. And this episode is sponsored by Atlantis Clothing. Everything from our Drug Lord collection, our Atlantis Signature collection, as well as our Return of the Vipers are available for sale right now at atlantisclothing.com. So stop by the website and shop today. All right, everybody. Today we're gonna get trippy a little bit. I had a chance a little while ago. I have one of my writers, Elena Dorsey. She had pitched me a story, and I remember the pitch like it was yesterday. She sent me a text message and said, "Hey Mecca, I think we should talk about shrooms." And I'm like, talk about like personally, you know what I'm saying? Like what you want to discuss. I've never done it before. But no, she had walked me through, you know, saying a whole culture that I had no clue about. But she was, you know, hipping me up to game. Like, you know, you're about to see a lot of decriminalization and a lot of conversation about decriminalizing the use of mushrooms. You're going to see a lot more conversation about psychedelics. And I said, well, I don't want to be behind the curve, so let me get involved in the conversation. Luckily for me, I actually knew somebody who was close to it and didn't even know it. And that's my friend Jay here, also known as the Cannabis Fairy. And she has her partner with her today, and we're going to discuss psychedelics. We're going to discuss this whole new community of well, I don't want to say new community, but it's new to me. We're going to discuss the psychedelic community, how and why we're seeing more black faces get involved with it, and also how you two got involved. So without further ado, can you introduce yourselves, people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jay.
Oh, hi, I'm Mason, everybody.
And so
I feel like y'all's about to be a folk group. Like, I'm Jay and I'm Mason and we about to sing.
Yeah. So we will down the line. But so I want to talk. So how I got into the psychedelic.
Oh, well, first just introduce yourself and tell us what y'all do.
Yeah. So I'm Jay. I founded the Cannabis Fairy, which is the first Black female-founded entheogenic plant church. And so I founded that based out in Oakland, California. It was just an amazing thing for me to find healing through cannabis, right? And so healing myself through cannabis in Oakland, California, and through this church organization, I was able to see and learn how to cultivate mushrooms under the Honorable Baba Kalindi Iyi, who recently transitioned, but if you know him, he's a wonder man in the psychedelic community. He was a Black cultivator, a superhero doser, and so just learning how to grow mushrooms from him set me on the path of founding the National Entheogenic Council, which is the first psychedelic organization, or Entheogenic as we like to say, organization founded by a Black woman. Being in this space, I did feel and see that it was a very white male dominated space. So I needed to know people to know that we are here in this space. So that's what I do. I grow and I heal, hopefully, and now I'm educating through the National Entheogenic Council.
Awesome. And you, Mason?
So I'm actually from the Metro Atlanta area.
Okay.
I moved out to Southern Oregon back in 2015 to get involved with the cannabis industry out there. And I was out there for several years doing a lot of different aspects of the industry, but ended up really mainly focusing on growing and soil science and organic nutrients. And then from Oregon, I moved out to Jamaica for about 4 months, working on setting up a grow out there and dealing with all of the licensing and all of that. And then family actually brought me back here to Georgia that needed some help. And then when the pandemic happened and lockdown and everything, I had to kind of pump the brakes on traveling and doing my cannabis consulting.
Yeah.
And that's where I actually developed a mushroom home cultivation center I call the Sporedrobe. Then I started filming a docuseries called High Dose Heroes to try to put some questions out to the scientific community about why different people are affected so drastically by these substances. And so I'm hoping to be releasing that in the next coming months here.
All right, so we about to get into again, like I said, we about to get into psychedelics overall, and especially the use that the way people use it. You know, it's not necessarily a recreational thing for everybody. It's also a mental healing type situation. So speak to us about, I guess, your first time consuming, both of you. When was the first time that you actually had a chance to try mushrooms and experience that scene?
Okay, so the first time that I tried them wasn't actually the first time that I achieved a mushroom experience. It took a couple of times for me to find my dose that was right for me. And when I finally did, it was just such a beautiful experience. And this was 15 years ago. And the one thing that sticks with me the most from that experience, we went down and laid down in the backyard, and I turned my head to the side so I was like eye level with the grass, and seeing the world from that perspective and just feeling so small and humbled and just realizing like there's so much out there that you still need to learn. Like that feeling from 15 years ago still resonates with me today whenever I talk about it.
My experience wasn't that altruistic. It wasn't that altruistic at all. It was scary. I was manic. I was crying and sweating and laughing all at the same time. I was definitely out in nature. And it was the biggest onset of guilt and grief that I'd ever experienced in my life.
The funny part is both of your experiences are things I would like to understand and things I don't want to do. You know, and I'm probably the one person. The only experience I have with anything psychedelic, where it comes to mushrooms, LSD, any of that, is actually watching it through TV or going back through the DARE program. Mm-hmm. Like I still remember to this moment this guy telling us about going to a sauna, and he was like he talked about all these drugs he did from LSDs and all this stuff. And he said he went to a sauna one day. I was going to my detox, and I sat in the sauna for about 20 minutes. He said all the highs I've ever had came out my body at once. And I thought that that's what a trip felt like when he told me that. Like he said, you feel all the highs coming out you at once. He said Mickey Mouse was talking to me at one point. I'm watching the walls melt. I always felt like, you know, I guess my thought of what an experience would be like that always came from media, and it'd always be over the top. Yeah. Like, so I'm listening to your two. It's like a kind of a mix in the middle, you know, but it's definitely what I was always wanted to either one, avoid, but two, wanted to experience. I wanted to experience that, like you said, that type of, you're looking around and you realize how small you are in the world, and then you also realize it could go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of the problem with a lot of this, right, you know, you had said that most of what you knew about the psychedelic experience came from TV, movies, and then just urban legends and stories through the grapevine.
Exactly.
And we have the same words, hallucinating, tripping, for all of these different substances, right? You say you're tripping on mushrooms, you're tripping on L, you're tripping on DMT, and they're all vastly different experiences. And so I think that we need to really widen our vocabulary about what these experiences are and how they make you feel, and that way we might be able to openly communicate about this, and everybody understands a little bit more what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I know, like cannabis, dosing properly is a big reason why you would have a different experience. Can you speak about dosing and like when it comes to shrooms, or when it comes to just psychedelics overall? Excuse me.
Well, I mean, so everybody's threshold is going to be really different, and like so, my docuseries is called High Dose Heroes because I can consume egregious amounts of psychedelics.
I'm a microdoser. Yeah, I'm definitely like a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 milligram a day.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I wouldn't dare do what Mason does, but I would certainly have to work my way very much up to it.
So what's your dosage like on a daily basis?
So my starting point is at 7 grams.
Okay.
That's where I achieve a tripping dose. Okay. When I was filming, I did 14.3 grams for the mushroom episode. I did about 12 hits of LSD and about 0.08 of DMT, and that's typically dosed out at like 0.2.
Yeah.
So I have a very high threshold for these substances, and you wouldn't guess that by looking at me. Right, I'm not a big fella, like you wouldn't expect that. But I have counterparts that'll take 2 grams of the same mushrooms that are twice my size and be at the same level I'm at 7. So I think dosing is really a tricky thing to say, like, oh, this dose will work for you because it worked for me. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a real learning curve when it comes to dosing psychedelics.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You know, like you say, you can't really gauge, I guess, by the size of a person. Because I would have assumed, again, that if I'm bigger, I could probably consume a little bit more, or I could probably, I could probably do it that way. But that's not the case.
Absolutely not the way that works. Absolutely not the way that works. So you have different recommendations. I always recommend microdosing if you are going to get into let's speak psilocybin, specifically magic mushrooms. So because it's the new rave, it's now legislation is passing, making it legal or making it in some ways medicinal. And Mason's super knowledgeable on that. But for us, it was very important for me to bring psilocybin and other entheogens to the Black community, because I come from a depression background, and I was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications and sleeping pills that were just not what it was for me. Like, I wasn't myself. I didn't like it. So of course cannabis was my entry and gateway in the most positive way of self-healing and self-actualization, and which is an entheogen. Cannabis is an entheogen. Psilocybin is an entheogen, and we're speaking plants, but we don't limit ourselves to plant entheogenic substances, right? Like, I absolutely believe in healing properties of LSD and DMT and ketamine and all of those chemicals. But yeah, so I would recommend for us, right? So a Black female, like, whose mom, who like works a lot, who is like trying to have some type of a psychological calming or breakthrough. It doesn't mean that these things go away, but it definitely helps with coping better than like a Lexapro or a Wellbutrin or Prozac. So I recommend starting at microdosing because within our community, I already feel that we are very apprehensive to step into these types of healing technologies, as Baba Kalindi would call them. So microdosing is a great place to start, like, if you're wanting to get into the healing movement through entheogens.
I'm glad you brought up the African American community, because it goes back to, well, I guess, what I've learned through media and how I've learned about psychedelics. It's always been a negative. And as a matter of fact, when you even mentioned how cannabis was a gateway, I almost could hear my father yelling down, "See, I told you." You know what I'm saying? We use a gateway drug to other drugs. We always look at it, you know what I'm saying, and connect it to that. And we never looked at LSD, anything like that, as something we do. We'd always consider it a white person thing. How are you having these conversations with the African American community about introducing psychedelics into their lives on two different ways, from recreationally and medicinally?
Mm-hmm. So I would say, do you have post-traumatic slave syndrome like me? Are you a Black mom who has bills to pay and you're most of the time single and by yourself? Do you have a lot of childhood traumas that you really need to get fucking through? Well, hey, psilocybin, cannabis, and other entheogens might be for you.
But you know, you would still have to do a little bit of a sell. You know, you have to explain. Well, why would something like that help, say, dealing with post traumatic issues that, you know, our community does systematically go through?
Well, it helps us to compartmentalize anxieties and traumas.
Okay.
You know, it helps us to compartmentalize anxieties and traumas, right? Like, so it allows you to put it in this space, and you deal with it, and you confront it, and you like cry manically and laugh and sweat all at the same time, or you run 4 miles around 5, 6, 7 miles around Birmingham, Alabama, which is my own
Has
town.
that happened?
Oh my gosh, it happened on a trip. I ran and I felt so great and so cathartic afterwards, and I could come back, and when I came back is when I really kind of got, I feel like you always get something from a trip or from an experience. Like, there's a take back, and my take back from that, where I ran around the city and sweated profusely and rode the skateboard through the projects, Southtown projects, was I came back with a serious work ethic and that this world was mine. So no matter what traumas and what depression, which I'm dealing with right now as we speak, no matter what we deal with, like compartmentalize it, deal with it, face it, embrace it, don't hide from it, don't try to like slave, and by slave I mean work, right, your job, and just put it to the side. Don't like take it out on your family in negative ways, which I know a lot of us do. So put it where it belongs, deal with it, face it.
Was it
And
hard for you
that's
to
what
explain
they
to your family that you were doing psychedelics, or that she was explaining?
I have the coolest mom in the world. I have the coolest mom in the world. So my mom and I are very much alike, and we have discussed our traumas. Through psychotherapy, I was able to talk to her a lot about things that I experienced in my childhood, and through entheogens as well. So she knows that I've always loved cannabis. That was no secret, but she also goes wherever I am. So when I was out in the Bay Area, like working, doing this footwork and being in the community, she was out there right along with me. She is probably on this live right now. That's my dog. Like my dad, and he recently, through my cultivation practices and through the church, I've grown a lot closer with him through entheogens, through this entheogenic movement. Yeah, so I think for me, it's been pride.
That's awesome, man. We have spoken about, we're watching laws be changed around this, and matter of fact, it was shocking to me election day that even some of this was on the ballot, but I don't live in a state like, what I'm saying? So it wouldn't have been something that would have popped in my mind. Speak to us about watching election night and watching states decide to allow for use, like I say, magic mushrooms, and states like Oregon washing away, just decriminalizing drugs altogether. What was your reactions to those?
Well, so it's a great step in the right direction, but I think something that your audience can understand is that isn't always, just because we're stepping in the right direction doesn't always feel like a victory.
Yeah.
And I feel like the entire Controlled Substance Act just needs to be abolished, and we just need to end the war on drugs. But this was a nice step to getting there and getting real data that we can actually start to use, because the legislation is really murky. And now the big thing with Measure 110, which is what decriminalized small possession amounts of the substances, right? It didn't decriminalize manufacture, transport, sale, any of that, just small possession.
Just possession of it.
But it also sets up addiction treatment centers to use some of this plant medicine, as well as other, modern means, to help people that are having a hard time with plants that are hurting them, like heroin and opioids. So that is a big thing with that. But, they have to have a minimum of a $54 million budget. That kind of raised an eyebrow. And, so there's always something. Measure 109 is what legalized psilocybin therapy in Oregon. And now it only decriminalizes mushrooms within the psilocybin therapy center. So when you go in and purchase them, you have to consume your mushrooms
right
on site.
Okay. You can't take it home.
Correct. And the first time you go, you're actually just getting a consultation. But they did let you consume cannabis in the psilocybin facilities, which I thought was really nice of them. But it's going to be an interesting business model, because it's not like a dispensary where you can have all of the foot traffic coming and going, because a mushroom experience can be anywhere from 4 to 8 to 20 hours, depending on how much you consume. So how do you get more than 12 people in a day through your facility, right? So it's not exactly set up to be an overly cash flow business.
It doesn't sound like it's set up to be profitable.
No, but the centers can grow their own products, and so I
Which
think
can be
like
very
how
profitable.
we'll see how they do it, because I think it's going to be a lot like Colorado's dispensaries, where it's like a 70-30 split, where Colorado's dispensaries produce 70% of the products in there, and then they purchase the other 30%. I think it's going to kind of go in that same direction as psilocybin crystal extract and other edibles or start getting made. You're going to see craft companies come up that only make gourmet mushroom chocolate bars and things like that. So it's going to be an interesting thing. To open a center, though, all you need is a high school diploma and to complete an OHA, which is the Oregon Health Authority course. So it's not a PhD. Like when it says therapy centers, that can be misleading. Because when I think of therapy, I think of like $250 an hour. So what would psilocybin therapy look at costing if you have an 8-hour experience, prep time, all of that? So it was really a relief to see that it wasn't on the path of being a medical industrial complex takeover.
Yeah. You know, the selling cannabis to the country has taken decades. You know, you're still watching people slowly get to understanding that this is a medicine. This is not necessarily a negative in people's lives. That's just now a thing. How long do you think it's going to take for us to really get this conversation going about psychedelics? Because you, past older generations, you still have a newer generation who's probably still thumbs down to it, just based off what they've seen in media and just what they've heard from other people.
Most people do.
Yeah.
So I'll say, this is why it's very important that an organization like the National Entheogenic Council exists. Because our motto is representation, education, and access, right? So we start within the community, and thank you to your amazing writer who gave in you for giving us this platform. But we start educating the people with people on the spectrum that need these types of therapies or that desire these types of therapies or technologies, as Baba Kalindi would say, in their lives. So that's the answer. That's the answer. Being available, being seen, being accessible, having representation.
And I mean, to just add on to that, giving people the platform to ask questions in a safe and comfortable environment. When I lived in Jamaica, psilocybin mushrooms are legal, but there's no commercial market set up for it. When I went picking with some of the fellows on the farm that we were building out, and they were like, it's tourist stuff. Like, we're not going to take these. And I was like, it's right here on this log. Like, you just pick them, you dry them, and you have a great time. Like, what do you mean? And, you know, whenever I try to talk with the Jamaicans about mushrooms, or my fixer would be sitting behind me making a face like, don't listen to him. And it was a big thing to overcome. Like, no, hallucinating doesn't mean that, like, you turn into a cartoon or you become claymation, right? Like, it's bright bursts of beautiful colors and overwhelming joy, and like all of your senses are dialed up to 15, right? Like, that's what it is. And hallucinating, I don't think, is the right word for that. So letting people come and ask questions on like the NEC platforms, on the websites, going to the events, and just being able to have that open dialogue, I think is the biggest step towards destigmatizing. And that's what's going to take it from a 5-year plan to a 50-year plan, is how willing people are going to be to openly talk about this. Because like you said, it is mental health, and not everybody wants to openly talk to strangers about their mental health, which I understand.
No, you know, it's very hard to get people to open up about something that they fear or they feel like is a negative. Like, I can almost feel like, you know, we have an election coming up now with, you know, we have the runoff happening. I can imagine there's a group of Republicans watching this show right now, like, yo, burn all this building down. You know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't be having any of these conversations.
While their kids are cultivating and having a fun time, and while they will wait till they get to Bohemian Grove in Northern California and do it, right? Like, so that's what we need to start saying. Like, yeah, you guys do it too. Stop fucking around. You guys have been hiding the shit. Stop hiding the good shit. Okay, we found it. Now let's kumbaya and get better.
Talk about the National Entheogenic. Oh man, I've been saying this over and over again, so it rolls off my tongue perfectly. But talk to us about the council.
Yeah, so the National Entheogenic Council.
Entheogenic, man.
Entheogenic. So an entheogen, let's start there.
Yes.
Is a plant We'll start with plant. You can go all into the substances later, but a plant that is used to reach like a higher spiritual power, or like a spiritual portal, if you will.
So that's why you consider cannabis one.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Myrrh is on the list. There are so many. What else is on the list of entheogens? So I'm sorry. Let me stay focused. So again, our motto is representation, education, and access. It's the first organization that I'm aware of. If anyone else knows, please put us in contact. But the first one founded by a sister, by a Black woman. We know that it is a very male-dominated white male-dominated spectrum or area, but everyone is now onto it, even with, So with the council, what we would like is for everyone to have a seat at the table, right? So we want Asian moms and Black moms and Indian dads and white friends and to all sit here and have this conversation on how we cannot monopolize healing, right? How we're not going to allow them to monopolize our healing, how we're going to take back nature, and we're going to use it for ourselves. And we plan to do that through those three major tenets.
So part of the, I feel like I watched you on Instagram, and I feel like part of your outreach is actually giving away weed. Am I tripping?
It is. So, and I give away every entheogen that I have access to. So I also give away shrooms. So that's the Cannabis Fairy. And I want to say the Cannabis Fairy is an amazing vehicle that I use to get to the council. So I've kind of like let the Cannabis Fairy kind of go to the community. But what we do within the Cannabis Fairy is the Cannabis Scavenger Hunt. And now it is a collaboration of the Cannabis Fairy and the National Entheogenic Council, where we will go around Northern California, the Bay Area, as well as the greater metro Atlanta area, and anyone else who wants to participate in the next one. And we just like hide cannabis and mushrooms and creams and bath salts. I actually had a little bit of the bath salts that I got from Jay, who is here. I got them from here actually.
Oh, Jay.
So I shared half of my bath salts in the scavenger hunt. So if you want to participate in our entheogenic scavenger hunt, please follow the National Entheogenic Council. Also the _cannabis_fairy to get involved. Yeah, so it's like $1,000 or so more each place of free entheogens.
That's what's up. I want to be there one day.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta get on your subscriber list.
Live action Mario.
Yeah, right.
It really is. It really so dope. Live action Mario. You're finding the mushrooms, you're driving around. We'll like leave clues for you on Instagram to like where to go and find it.
You pop a mushroom, just so you know you like powering up.
Yes. So I have to also shout out to Dave from Charged Up Performance Training for getting us this opportunity. He's also a founding member of the council.
Oh, is that why he be so turned up when I see him in the morning? Dave's my trainer as well, just FYI, y'all. The worst thing I hear every morning is superset. Like, I'm so tired of hearing that term. And for those who don't know, that means you're doing one workout after another. Like, today he killed me after a push-up. I did a push-up, next thing you know, all right, here's these 40s, man. What you want me to do with this? give me 30 seconds.
He's definitely going to push you. So please follow him if you're not following him on Instagram. He's like a silent assassin. He's just been such an amazing force. Mason and I were speaking and he was like, you know what? Perhaps networking is his superpower. Like he has so many superpowers. So I don't want that to go unsaid, because he's not here sitting on the sofa. You have 3 founding members here that are pushing this agenda. Yes, we're pushing the agenda, okay? Like, whose agenda do you want to believe?
I'm trying to tell y'all, Mitch McConnell is watching this show right now. And he says, see, they're using keywords.
Yes, I am. Buzz. Because
Buzzwords,
we need
agenda.
to heal. We need therapy. And those are 2 big buzzwords right now.
I know you were out in California not too long ago as well.
Yeah, so I live bi-coastally.
Okay.
So I live in both Oakland, California, and somewhere in the South. Because in Oakland, like, I can just exist and not exist because, like, you know, how it is out there now. But yeah.
How was it, though? I know you were out there for, I feel like it was a council. It was
Council camp. Mason, do you want to yeah, Mason, do you
Please
want to
talk about council camp.
It's amazing. It was, tell them tell them.
So
one time at council camp.
So council camp was, you know, from the A to the Bay involvement, right? We had people from all over the country coming in and coming together, all with different backgrounds and viewpoints on these entheogenic substances. And so, you know, once we all really got into the same place, we were able to really dive into those three words, right? Access, education, representation, and what that really means in applicable forms, right? Because we've seen with cannabis, state after state after state makes the same mistakes over and over again with legalization. Like, oh, geez, you think they'd learn? And so as these substances are on the same exact path that cannabis was on 20 years ago, like, we have a chance to do better.
Yeah.
And I think Jay recognized that when she put this ball in motion and brought in all of the different voices that she brought in. And I think we've come up with some really good strategies, events. You know, it was my first time in Oakland. I'd been to San Francisco, but never across the Bay to Oakland. So that was really cool, kind of seeing the whole Bay Area now and experiencing that and giving.
Did you walk away saying yada da?
You know what I mean? So yeah, it was very important for us to have specialists. Shout out to Sabrina out in Denver. Shout out to OU Sun. Shout out to Mudu. Shout out to, who am I forgetting? Chief Nighthawk, who is a healer here. So we had some of the biggest brains that I could come into contact with to fairly sit down and create bylaws. To shout out to Dr. April Hang, to create bylaws, to create business plans, to get a real fair. A real fair shot at what equal access would look like, right? So we flew in all of these specialists out to Oakland. We just like smoked. We did not get to do a psychedelic trip. Mason, of course, did, but I was so stressed out and drained.
Mason's like, this is what I do.
Yeah, so we had the best minds in the business coming together to put together something that was fair and inclusive that we could take to people to say, donate to this organization because you want us to be at the forefront. You don't want us to, what did you say earlier, Mason, about how they failed at...
So, I mean, from where I'm sitting as somebody who's watched cannabis legalization roll out and coming from prohibition land, man, y'all lost the war on drugs and y'all lost legalization.
By y'all, who are you speaking of?
I mean, black people, brown people, like the minority, the people who suffered the most from the war on
Black
drugs
people.
and who filled the jails, which then in turn filled the slave labor pools. So, like,
and
it's been pretty bad.
Yeah, we're that organization that is there, that is sitting at the table, that's saying, hey, we do this shit legally just like y'all do. This is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Stop playing with us. You know, let us out of these jails. One of our big tenets also is raising money for legal fees, maybe even putting money on people's books who may be fighting some type of entheogenic warfare. Yeah. Like we're that official vehicle.
Do you feel like the community here is growing in Atlanta?
Oh, for sure. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's on shrooms. Everybody's got a psychedelic plug, so they say.
So they say. You know,
but if you follow us, you'll... No, I won't say that. 501c3.
You know, I've been to pop-up. You know, I go to pop-ups occasionally in the city. I can tell y'all where they be at. But I be at pop-ups occasionally, and you will see people with shrooms. And when I first saw that, I thought to myself... And people think they're getting bad weed. I know y'all getting bad shrooms. Like, I don't know where you...
So we have an amazing guy who is Reggie from Oakland Hyphae. Reggie is a DIY but superior mycologist. Please follow him. So he's brilliant. Anyway, so Reggie is working with teams testing psilocybin. So in the same way that you had Dr. April Hang, they're testing cannabis and hemp and all of these things. So Reggie is working with a scientific team to actually test psilocybin. Be very safe. You can be, and I know Mason can speak to this as well, but it's so easy to have contaminated psilocybin. It's so easy to have molded psilocybin. And because the way that the fungi grows, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between mold and just a pressure point where you may have touched the mushroom too hard and it bruised, right? So please, guys, if you are doing psilocybin and cannabis, get clean medicine.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, how hard is it to figure out whether or not this is moldy or this is something that's still usable?
Well, so now there's mold is a real blanket term, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that falls into that. And now
mushrooms, you would think, yeah.
Now, when a tub is contaminated, there's multiple different types of contamination. Now, a lot of them don't affect the fruiting bodies visually. So there will be a bunch of dangerous mold and bacteria in the tub, but people will still harvest the mushrooms because they have money to make and it's not regulated, so they can get away with that kind of stuff. Now, there is sometimes like white spotting and gray mold that is pretty visible, just like with cannabis. If you get a bud with a bunch of gray mold on it, like you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And now there are some people that if they boil that into and make tea, they claim that the mold is gone. I'm not going to say it is or isn't because the testing is just now becoming a thing. And just like with cannabis, how you have terpenes that give the entourage effect, different mushroom varieties and strains have alkaloids that do the same thing. And that's why you have different intense highs or body highs versus visuals. So there's a lot to still be discovered when it comes to that. So, I mean, really it comes down to, do you trust the person that you got them from? Really is the best advice I can give. Like, you can examine it all day long.
Yeah.
Some of it is visible, but a lot of it isn't.
Yeah. Do you fear that we're going to start getting a lot of cheap product on the street, being that, you know, from LSD to mushrooms, that being that this is becoming a popular conversation, it's not regulated, and most people don't know what they're getting? Are you fearing that we might see a flood of bad product hit the street?
Well, I mean, we kind of so a lot of people that are doing LSD are really doing LSA, which is something you can extract out of baby Hawaiian rosewood seeds, which I believe are still legal, as well as morning glory plants. And it's a much easier synthesis for beginning chemists to do, and they'll just tell people it's LSD. And now real LSD glows under a black light. If you don't have access to a testing kit or anything like that, if you shine a black light over paper strips or a vial, it'll glow like deep green. So that's how you can at least test if it is LSD. So, I mean, I definitely think that flood is going to come in. As far as mushrooms, you're always going to have people that cut corners, but really once you get the hang of it, mushroom production is so easy and efficient. I think a lot more people are going to start turning to growing their own mushrooms at home versus getting them. You know, with all of the lockdowns, a lot of people have had a lot of time for some new hobbies. And, you know, going back to what Jay was saying earlier about these substances being for everybody, you know, this shirt says psilocybin mushrooms make happier humans. I went to the Kroger gas station, and an old white man in a Georgia Bulldogs cap with a cross pin in the center of it just starts talking to me about how he was tripping on mushrooms in the 70s and how he misses it, and like, oh, I hear it's making a comeback. And I was shook. I was not
I heard it's making a comeback.
Right.
You know,
I made your way.
I couldn't believe it. Like, this was the last person I was expecting to, like, see my shirt and give me positive feedback. So I think that more and more people are willing to openly talk about it, and those demographic barriers are shattering to where everybody is using these substances. And I keep getting surprised when people will be like, oh yeah, no, my mom did DMT to like get over this, or, you know, and I'm just be like, your mom's doing DMT now. Okay, cool. Like,
And Johns Hopkins, UAB, these are just a couple of the hospital, you know, big medical organizations who are actually doing psilocybin therapy like as we speak. If you go to the website nationalentheogeniccouncil.com, we have some links where you can actually see what's happening. It's gonna flood the market, and hopefully I hope that the young guys at the gas stations who used to be who did the same thing with cannabis can do it with mushrooms, because it needs to be a fair, equal, and open market to everyone. Now, we still want them to be able to practice clean medicine.
Yeah.
So you can come to somewhere like the National Entheogenic Council and learn, at some point later, become a member and learn cultivation, right? So the water guys won't be selling water, by the lights. They'll be selling happy psilocybin. That is the goal. The goal is for everyone that wants to have it, has it.
And I think, going to like the capsules, right? There's a big difference between therapeutic daily basis psilocybin and like what I do. Yeah. Right. When I was in Amsterdam and I got to legally buy truffles at a store, and which was just so cool, right? I want to say that. But that was the first time when I really, I guess, understood the anxiety, like medication aspect of it. Like, okay, because I was in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language. I wasn't going to go buy the strongest psychedelic they had and like eat the whole container and then just be in a foreign country where I don't speak the language having a bad time,
causing an international incident, man.
Exactly. And so I was like, well, this is very mild, but like, I feel great. Like, I'm smiling ear to ear. Like, I don't have a care in the world. And that's when I realized, like, okay, so for an anxiety, an antidepressant, mood stabilizer, like, this is where these doses can be very effective on a daily, every other day basis, as opposed to like me putting 7 or 10 grams into a smoothie and, really doing some work. So I think that getting those capsules, that's going to be like a real bridge of understanding of people taking these really small doses in capsule form. Like, oh, well, this is a nice boost to my Wednesday afternoon. Like, I'm not overwhelmed by all of my normal daily tasks, and I feel more confident and better going into what I have to do tonight, and getting that normalization of the substance, as opposed to picturing people rolling around in the street or stripping off their clothes and running naked trying to fight the police. Like, those types of things that have been depicted in pop culture that aren't really that accurate when it comes to this. Like,
you guys have been very informative tonight. I feel like there's so much more deep diving to do, and I want people to do that dive with you. So can you please let people know how they can follow you guys, how they can learn more about the council if they wanted to get involved, or if they just wanted to learn in general a little bit more about the psychedelic experience?
Yeah, so please go to National Entheogenic, ENTHEOGENIC, Council with an I, .com or .org, and donate. Like, that's the number one thing that you can do. We want to bring you guys conferences. We want to bring you content. We want to bring you informatives. We want to bring you cultivation classes. And the only way that we can do that is with the support of the community. And that's every single community, because everybody needs to have a word on this. Also, please follow us on Instagram, which is the same, National Entheogenic Council. We also have Twitter and Facebook, but we're most active at the website as well as Instagram.
And
for me, you can find me on Instagram at High Dose Heroes, all one word, and there you can find links to some of my other pages and Patreon and all of that. I'm just now starting to upload content from speaking presentations and things like that. Okay. Another great resource I just want to leave people with is a website, Psychonaut Wiki.org, all
Dope
one word.
site.
It is phenomenal. It's run by 4 PhDs out of Europe, and it is the Wikipedia of all things entheogenics, molecules, whatever we're calling it nowadays. There's a lot of great information and resources on there, and definitely some good research.
Look, and I'm gonna make sure you send that over to me so I can get that into the copy later when we drop the episode, so people can go directly to the site. I appreciate your time. I think this is very informative. I feel like if I ever do it, when I do get to the point where I want to have an experience, I'm gonna come to you guys.
You know what? Yes.
I'm
no.
coming to you
on
guys.
top of that, yeah. No, we'll guide you.
Yes, I see. Yeah, like, and your voice is so soothing. It's almost like Siri.
Thank you.
So yeah, you could guide me through this. Because I don't want to do it by myself.
Oh yeah, no, we got you, man. We can philosophize, we can get metaphysical, whatever you're trying to do.
And I feel like it's gonna happen, and that's the thing that turns me off. Like,
Or we could just tell you that everything is gonna be amazing.
Or I could just tell you
Relax.
time is an illusion and you've already done them.
Very true.
see, we better get into something else, because I've actually come to the concept of myself this year that I think that time is an illusion. I think that
It
we look at
is
time so
completely
weird.
a
Oh,
man-made
absolutely.
concept.
Am I tripping right now and I just don't know it? Like, oh shit.
Oh,
You are.
You're trying to end the podcast, so we won't get into the construct of time.
Yeah,
But another
yeah.
day.
Am I here?
Yeah.
I thank you for coming through tonight. Please kick it with us for a little while. I know people in here having plenty of questions as well. Thank y'all very much, both of y'all, for coming through, Mason and Jay.
Thank you for
and that's
having
Cash
us.
Color
Thank you
Canvas.
so much for having us.
No problem, boss. Oh, and thank you for the cookies. I did ask first. Oh, I just noticed that too, bro.
He grew those. That's what we were saying.
It's gonna be a
Grown in the
good night.
spore drobe prototype.
Spore drobe.
The caps, the stems, and the spore drobe will transfer you to a magical realm.
Boy, please, man. It's gonna be crazy tonight. It's Cash Color Canvas, a high level of conversation on livehip-hopdaily.tv.